guarantee.
Okay, boys and girls, we're ready to start. Today we're going to be discussing the Ottoman Empire, which is the empire that displaced Rome, the Eastern Roman Empire, from what is today Istanbul. However, we did not finish altogether Rome. There were still a couple of slides that I wanted to cover with you with Rome. And so we're going to try to do that now. It's not going to take long. And then we'll just try to make up the difference later with the Ottoman Empire. And not only that, the Ottoman Empire, we're going to cover the Ottoman Empire a lot quicker than we're going to cover Rome. Rome is huge. Rome is, the Roman Empire lasted for so long, uh, more than 1,000 years, and the history is much more intense, much more intricate, much more complicated. They influence the world a lot more. So, to be honest with you, I rather spend a little bit more time with Rome, and and if we have to spend less time with the Ottoman Empire, that's fine. Now, talking about Rome, if there are um, any questions whatsoever, I understand that these are complicated subjects. Rome is a complicated subject. I try to make it as easy as I could for you. I try to give you if you remember each and every one of the important events, like the Punic War, like the emperors, like the kings, the Republic, the switch over from the Republic into an empire situation, Julius Caesar, Brutus, all of those characters, you're going to have a fairly good idea or a fairly good vision of what Rome is. At least when you go into any sort of history class, whether in high school or whether in college or whatever, and you sit there listening to a lecture and the professor or the teacher starts talking about Rome, you will at least have a basic understanding of Rome. And that's what I wanted to do. Like I told you, there are people that get PhDs in Rome. They study their entire lives uh, Rome. So to cover it in 4 1-hour classes, it ain't gonna happen. It's not. The best that you can do is get a little taste of what Rome is all about. Anyway, so let's try to pick it up. Um, towards the end of uh, or after the empire had started, and after several of the uh, emperors had come in and out of Rome, a funny thing happened, and that is that Rome became Christian. They accepted Christianity, and the first emperor to accept Christianity was Constantine. Constantine. Uh, Now, Constantine had a problem. And that is that the Christian religion had done a lot to soften Rome's attitude about blood, about killing, about conquering other lands. And when that happens, and when you live in in as tough of a neighborhood as the Romans lived, with the Gauls up in the north and the uh, Carthaginians, or well, they by then they were part of Rome, but the people that lived in that area, um, when you live in a neighborhood like that where these nations are very aggressive and they will invade another country at the drop of a hat. Um, Rome really opened itself up to getting invaded and to having problems. Um, after, the around 284 AD, things began to really change, and perhaps change for the worst right around that time. So I'm gonna try to make it quick. Um, Constantine, around the year 312, 313, in the earlier part of the 300s, he accepted Christianity. Uh, and he became a Christian, and he even called himself Saint Constantine, and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. And he fought a couple of wars. Um, he fought a couple of wars, but eventually the Roman Empire fell. The Roman Empire, as we know it today, fell. In the late 4th and 5th century, the Western Empire entered a critical stage, which terminated with the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Under the last emperors of the Constantine dynasty and Valentinianic dynasty, Rome lost decisive battles against the Sasanian Empire, the Germanic barbarians. Those were the people that were north of Rome around the Gauls in 363. Emperor Julian the Apostate was killed in a battle of Samara against the Persians, and the Battle of Adrianople cost the life of Emperor Valens. So, things started really getting bad. And just prior to this, what had happened was that uh, Constantine did not want to live in Italy, did not want to live in the boot, in the Italian boot. And what he did was, Rome was so big, was still so big, that he split the empire into two. He created the Western Empire, which was based out of Rome, the Rome that we know, and the Eastern Empire that was based in what he called uh, Constantinople, named after him, Constantinople. And Constantinople was what is today uh, Istanbul, right? Turkey. Here is the connection of where we jump from this particular period into the Ottoman Empire. And this is why I wanted to have the Ottoman Empire pick up from here, from this point. Because prior to this, if we were to study, and we will eventually, we're going to study Eastern Rome, the history of Eastern Rome, but we need to put that together with the Holy Roman Empire. And the Holy Roman Empire was based way north, and it wasn't Roman at all. It was actually Germanic, right? Uh, we need to study both of those together. It's a little confusing. I hope I'm not being too confusing with you, but remember that Constantinople fell to the Ottomans, who were Turks, and they were Muslims, right? They were Muslims. And that's where we're going to pick up the Ottoman Empire. So, all of the other stuff that's here, you can read it later. You can become acquainted with all of these years, which is approximately 700 years altogether. But later, we're going to have a class where we're going to cover the 700 years and the Holy Roman Empire together. Because from a religious, cultural, political, globally, everything, those two empires interacted in a certain way that you need to understand. So, right up till the time of Constantine, that's where we're going to stop this particular history lesson, and we're going to jump into the Ottoman Empire. Now, you can read all of this. You can read about Attila, who was one of the few uh, of the Gauls to be able to break into Rome. He was a Visigoth, actually, and just destroy Rome. He was part of the big fall of Rome from a military point of view, from a military perspective. So you can read about this guy, and when we do have that class of the Byzantine Empire, and the class is going to be called the Byzantine Empire and the Holy Roman Empire, both of those we're going to put together. We're going to talk about Attila. Attila was a son of a gun. He was a bad, bad, bad boy. He was one of the baddest boys around. He was a bloodthirsty maniac who, fortunately for the world, he died at the age of 47, I think, in a drunken, uh, during a drunken spree during his marriage to his third wife. He had two other wives. He was a polygamist. You know, he wasn't. He had one wife, then he picked up another one, then he went out and he picked up this other one, who was much younger than he was, and he got drunk and he fell back and he hit his head and he died. But he was mean. He was one of the meanest guys you could possibly imagine. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about him, you can watch several. There are several movies, and I know that one of them is in YouTube. Uh, it's by an actor by the name of Jack Palance, and that one is called Attila Faces Rome or some kind of crazy stuff like that. And it's an excellent movie. It's an older movie. I'm going to tell you, it's a movie that goes back to the '60s. You know, I remember watching it when I was a young man. Um, but this will give you a little idea of who Attila was. So all of this stuff about the Byzantines, where you can read it now when you get this particular PowerPoint. I'll make sure that this PowerPoint goes to you. But um, but we're going to cover the Byzantine Empire with the Holy Roman Empire. Those are the two empires that we're gonna cover. Now, why, what is it about Rome? What is it about Rome that fascinates all of us? You know, we're totally fascinated by Rome. We've always been. There's so many movies that have been made about Rome. You hardly ever see a movie about the Ottoman Empire. Let's face it. Um, you hardly ever see a movie about the Visigoth. There's a few, but these are groups of people, nations that just did not have the impact on the world that Rome did. Rome was very impactful. Rome, they were amazing. Um, they were builders. They provided government for us in the West in later years, right? In other words, that was another one of their contributions to the world. A structure of government, a structure of the military. They were the first ones to create a professional military that had the same uniforms and had the same weapons, and they had the best generals. So Rome, I mean, and the architecture of Rome is just one of those things. I highly recommend that you read this part when you get this particular PowerPoint. Read about the architecture. The architecture in Rome is just mind blowing, mind blowing. How much they built and how many of these structures still remain in their places. In Tunisia is over on the northern part of Africa, right? Is Tunis, the capital of Tunis, and in Tunisia, oh my God, just all over the place. In England, in France, in southern France, they were builders. These cats were builders, and the stuff. And if you ever go to Rome, and I hope you do, if you haven't been there, and maybe if you do go now after you've read a little bit about Rome, and I've told you a little bit about Rome, you can actually appreciate it a little bit more. You can go to the Colosseum and appreciate that a little bit more for what the Colosseum, did and how they built it and all that stuff. This is the aqueducts over here, um, and up on the top tier, water would flow. Water would flow up here, and so it was kind of like a piping system. And the reason why they made it high like this was so that they could lower this, and then gravity would pull the water down, and then the water would go far. The water could be spread over a larger uh, area of where they were at. And but they just built just incredible stuff. Um, the Pantheon, you know, the times that I've been in the Pantheon, it has totally blown my mind, totally blown me away. Uh, the Pantheon is just one incredible building. The inside of the Pantheon, and the inside of the Pantheon, even though now is dedicated to Catholicism, it was before Catholicism. It was before Christianity. It was actually a temple to Roman gods. That's how. So it was built before the Christian period. Now, the Catholic Church uses the Pantheon. I guess, and I don't know whether they're the owners or 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 the Italian government is the owner. But when you go in, you see a lot of Catholic and Christian motifs and themes and things like that. But it wasn't that way. I mean, they all the other gods, all the other Roman gods, Jupiter and Mars and everybody else was in there. Um, and Let me see, the Colosseum. Colosseum is amazing. The Colosseum, um, they would have water uh, wars, battles. They would fill it up with water and they would bring in boats, and these people would fight to the death. Um, so it was just amazing. And then they would drain the water, and then they would have the other battles. They would take the plank that would be over to make it hermetically sealed so that the water wouldn't escape. They would take it out and they would put sand. And I mean, they were crazy. These people were just absolutely unbelievable. Uh, they were bloodthirsty, and that's one of the things that when Christianity came in, uh, Rome lost this bloodthirstiness, and with that, they lost their ability to hold on to large portions of land. It just That's the way it was. Uh, all kinds of columns. They provided with they created all kinds of columns and arches and and scroll ornaments, and I mean they were just pretty amazing. They invented the keystone. The keystone is this one stone here that holds the ark, uh, the Roman ark, perfectly so that it doesn't fall, because pressure is distributed one way and the other, right? Like it shows right here. Um, the domes, how they build domes. Imagine building domes back in those days. You know how hard that was. It was incredible. They perfected concrete. Cement and concrete had been around, but the Romans took it and they really perfected it, and they used it. In other words, the later portions or the later versions of concrete can be said to have been invented by the Romans. And then, of course, the Roman roads. They had roads all over the place. They would bring in very large boulders. They would put those boulders down, and that, even though it would be a little bit of a bumpy road, the cart would be hitting these holes, but it at least allowed uh, traffic. It allowed the army, the walking army, to travel long distances through these roads. And the Appian Way is one of the roads that still exist, that goes from the southern part of Rome, the southern part of Italy, all the way to Rome. And it's a very famous road. Um, so they build roads. The bridges, they build bridges that are still standing today and are still being used today, more than 1,000 years ago, more, in fact, 2,000 years ago. And those bridges are still being used. So it's amazing the type of stuff. And this is the reason why people have been fascinated. And these bridges are in Germany, they're in Spain, they're just everywhere. And And this is the reason why we've got such fascination, for the Roman Empire, republic, kingdom, whatever we want, because they were that amazing. They also built a lot of these milestone markers, and they would put this down so that people knew the distance between, let's say, where they were and where Rome was, or what something else was. And they would put inscriptions, and they would put dates, and they would put all kinds of crazy stuff on these markers. And you see those still all over Europe. Um, Now, they utilized the military the best way that anybody uh, could ever use them. They were professional soldiers, and consequently, they were able to take over an area like this one right here. Imagine what a large area Rome had control over, right? And that was all done because of the combination between a Senate that knew how to invest money into the military, and a military that was professional. You know, um, that was basically it. Um, so, and they had uniforms and weapons that were the same. Uh, not like, let's say, the Visigoth. The Visigoth, one guy would carry a club, the other guy would carry a sword, the other guy would carry, I don't know, a hatchet or an axe or something. Uh, all of the Roman soldiers, had, a platoon would have the same weapons. So you had the archers; they all had the same arches with the same arrows. They had the foot soldier who had the same sword and the same lances and the same shields. And when these guys, imagine, here you are, Visigoth, a ragtag kind of a soldier, um, that you're nothing more than a marauder, than a, I don't know, than a just a savage, a wild person. And you see a column of these very professional soldiers coming at you, that were all the same, that were all dressed to the gills, that had weapons that were all the same. And these guys were totally motivated to chop your head off. Imagine the fear that the Roman soldier could instill on people. And these were all weapons that they used. And again, as I say, um, a certain sword would be given to a certain type of soldier, and all of those soldiers would have the same sword, and so forth. So, um, I mean, really, even the headgears, everything, they were really. And they also had, these are called machines. These are called war machines, because they're used to do something, to climb up the side of a wall, or maybe a catapult to throw a stone at the wall and try to knock down the wall. They recruited people like a military. They levied taxes to the population. They used those taxes to invest on the military, and they recruited people. Just, I mean, we get that today. Our armies are really the same. They have doctors out in the field to take care of the wounded. Um, you know, a Visigoth gets his leg slashed, he'd probably die out there, because he had nobody to take care of him. The only thing he could do would be to go to somebody's village, or rather go to somebody's farm and ask for help, you know. But not the Romans. The Romans were organized enough. They actually even invented a lot of medical instruments, to open up wounds more, to clean it up, to stitch a wound, to pull a tooth, all of that stuff. So they were, and then of course the gladiators. We are totally fascinated by the gladiators. The gladiators were performers, but they performed to the death. Um, they performed to the death. They fought, not like boxers today. They get in the ring with gloves, and they only fight for 10 rounds or 12 rounds, and then one guy gets knocked out, and then that's it. The other guy wins the fight. These guys would fight to the death, and gladiators would also fight animals. You should watch the movie Gladiators with Russell Crowe. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good movie. It throws a couple of facts in there, but for the most part, the facts are not very erroneous, because Russell Crowe kills Commodus, the Emperor Commodus, and that's not what happened. The Emperor Commodus, like I told you last time, he was strangled by a wrestler in his own bathroom, and this was after he had been poisoned. So the gladiators, they fought. 10 famous gladiators. Read this when you get this PowerPoint. These were all the 10 most famous gladiators, and they all did amazing things, each and every one of us. Each and every one of them. Gannicus and Spiculus. Spiculus was crazy. I mean, I've read a lot about Spiculus. He was a crazy nut. Um, Marcus Attilius and Commodus. Commodus considered himself to be a gladiator, but he cheated. He cheated because he would cut the veins off of the gladiators he was going to fight, so that they would bleed and they would be, weaker when they were in the arena with him. So he was a cheat, but he was a gladiator and he was the emperor, both at the same time. Tetratus, Priscus, and Verus. I mean, there's 10 of these guys, and I really highly recommend you read this when you get it. It's really kind of cool. It's really, what they did and all that stuff is really. And then, of course, Spartacus. Spartacus, he created a rebellion, and he almost brought down the government of Rome until they caught him and they killed him. And they also caught a lot of the gladiators that had revolted with him, and they hung them and they crucified them and all kinds of stuff. So now inventions, they invented a whole slew of stuff. The arches, uh, the cities that are based on grid, like this, straight squares. Before, cities would be helter skelter. The Romans were very organized, and they had part of the Senate would be part of their responsibility was to create, whenever roads were going to be built, they would design it and they would make sure that things were done the right way. So let me see. That's nothing. Sewers. They invented sewers. They had toilets that were public toilets. Those toilets are still there. If you ever go to Rome, go to where the toilets are. And of course, they were a little bit not very hygienic, because they would keep a sponge on a stick in a bucket of water, and that's what they would use to clean themselves with. But then one guy would clean himself with it, and then the other person would grab it and clean himself or herself. So it wasn't very hygienic. But what the toilets did was that it would allow the feces and all of the human waste to be flushed away into some hole somewhere. The roads and the highways, they invented certain ways. They invented the aqueducts, and you should read about the aqueduct, how the aqueduct is put together and how they work. It's amazing. It's amazing what these guys did. The Roman numerals, they invented the Roman numerals. They invented a lot of surgery tools and techniques. They invented the Julian calendar. They invented newspapers. Now, newspapers were not on papyrus. They were not on paper. A lot of times they were on stone or on wood. But, they had a way of allowing the regular population to read about what was going on, you know. And this is a quick overview of all of the leaders of Rome. So please go through it and familiarize yourself with it. It takes you all the way from the very beginning, from the seven Roman kings, all the way to Constantine in 306 to 337. And that's the end. That's the end. I wanted to touch on this because we weren't able to do it. I'm going to send this through. Please do yourselves a favor, read through as much of this as you possibly can. It is huge, 160 pages, but pick up where we left off. Not, don't start from the beginning unless you want to really learn about Rome. There's a lot of information here. This is a PowerPoint and that can stay with you through school. You can use it as a reference. It's a great tool. Now, so let's get it started with the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire is a little complicated for people that don't understand um, Islam, that don't understand Islam. So what I did was I'm giving you an in-depth, well, I shouldn't say an in-depth, but I'm giving you a look on Islam so that you understand uh, what Islam is all about and what the Ottoman Empire is all about. Now, by the way, if you have any questions, please, I like it when you guys ask questions. That's telling me that you're interested in the subject, that you're paying attention, because everybody has questions. So if you have any questions, fire away. If you have any questions about Rome, fire away. It's a good time to ask me about Rome. If, as I give you this lecture on the Roman Empire, if you have any questions, please go ahead and write it, talk it, do whatever you want. Anyway, so the Ottoman Empire at its peak, at its highest point, was maybe not as big as Rome, but pretty big, pretty big. Rome kind of came all the way up here, where England is, the British Isles are now. And it went all the way down through Spania or Spain into northern Africa and across like this, right? The Ottoman Empire was not quite as big. They only came to what we now consider to be Central Europe, right? Central Europe. If we were to draw some lines here, we would say that Western Europe is this over here. This would be Western Europe. And then Central Europe would be, let me see, Constantinople, Damascus, this would be Central Europe. That would be Central Europe. And then from here on out, this is Eastern Europe. And this would have Russia. It would have the Ukraine over here somewhere, Russia, stuff like that. So this is the way we kind of look at things. It's all Europe. Don't get me wrong. All of this is Europe. But just kind of like, when we talk about in the United States that we say the East Coast, the Central Plains, and the West Coast, right? Kind of the same thing. Europe, we from a topographical, from a cultural to political consideration, we say that Western Europe, Central Europe, and Eastern Europe. Today, the NATO, the North Atlantic Trade Organization, which is a military organization, has a lot of the Central European countries like this. This is all NATO. The EU is very similar to NATO in as far as the countries that it covers. The EU is the European Union, right? And there is, I don't know, 27 countries right now that are part of the European Union. These countries here, East, or rather Central and East, were part of the USSR, part of Russia, part of the Soviet Union, all the way up to the late 80s, early 1900s. And then when the Soviet Union collapsed, they left the Soviet Union and they decided, the Soviet Union was such a bad deal for them. They really didn't like being part of the Soviet Union, so they aligned themselves with the EU, and now they're part of the EU. Many of them are part of NATO, uh, which is a military organization. So this is the map, and this is the map that shows the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire at one time had a big portion of Central Europe. In fact, later I'm going to show you the countries that are still very Islamic. There are some countries here in Central Europe, uh, places like Albania, which is right over here somewhere. Albania is like 97% Islamic. Uh, so uh, so they were pretty active, and this has been, and like you've heard me before, this has been my complaint all the time. I always complain about the same thing. Men are crazy, you know, people are crazy. And maybe we should have been governed by women, because women don't get themselves into this conquering mentality. But men have really messed things up. Um, you know, Rome, for all of the contributions that it made, uh, a lot of people died. Uh, they subjugated a lot of people. They did a lot of crazy stuff. And the same with all the others, all the other nations. Um, it got to the point that unless the nation was conquering other nations, and like in the case of Rome, they could be assured that they would be conquered themselves. Somewhere along the line, somebody would come in and try to conquer them. So, this is the Ottoman Empire at its highest. Now, like all the empires in this world, it collapsed. The Soviet Union was an empire; it collapsed. Um, and Napoleon tried to take over the world; he wasn't able to. Hitler tried to take over the world; he wasn't able to. Uh, when you got people like that they think they can take over and they can hold on to an area, uh, they're fooling themselves. They're fooling themselves because there are too many cultural considerations, too many cultural attitudes, too many different languages, all of that stuff. So it's just not feasible. But anyway, so let's get it started. Um, the first thing we got to do is in order to understand the Ottoman Empire, we have to understand Islam. Do any of you know what Islam is? Any of you? Any of you?
I
Let me
kind
see.
of
Somebody is answering something.
I kind
A
of
culture.
know.
Um, no, it's a religion. It's a religion. Uh, when you're a Muslim, you believe in Islam. You're Islamic. Both of those terms are interchangeable. They're interchangeable. So Islam is the entire thing. Um, Muslim is the individual. So you're a Muslim. Uh, you believe in Islam. So let's take a look. Let's take a look. And again, as I say, um, the Ottoman Empire considered themselves the protector of Islam. So here's a religious component that sort of allowed them to take over land in order to convert the people that they took over to Islam and hold on to what they have to prevent Catholicism, Christianity, you know, Hebrews, Jews, whatever, from coming in and converting their people to a religion that wasn't Islam. It's all about religion. Um, no, empires, bloodthirsty empires like Rome, they've done a lot of damage over the years. Religions have done a lot of damage too, unfortunately. And the reason why they've done a lot of damage is because it creates a zeal in people's minds that there's a better place than the one we have to look up to, right? You're going to go to heaven. If you do the things that the religion tells you to do, you're going to go to heaven. And that is a lure, a reward that is just too great for people not to dive into religion. And then leaders use religion for their own purpose. They tell people, oh, you're of this religion and you have to go and kill people in order for you to go to heaven. But they do it for their own selfish ends because they want power. So religion becomes a play of power, right? Becomes a play of power. And a lot of bad stuff has happened because of religion, not just Islam, Christianity. The Jews are the only ones that don't really get involved, it seems like. They fought a couple of wars, but only as a way of protecting themselves. But Christianity and Islam are two religions that have always been at odds, number one. They've always been fighting one with the other. And they're the two culprits, it seems like. They've caused more problems than you could possibly imagine. The Buddhist, I've never heard a Buddhist try to take over another country. Never heard it. I've never heard of a Hindu trying to take over another country. But for some reason, the Christians and the Muslims, because they're proselyting. Proselyting means that you want to convince people to join your religion, right? You do missionary work. They're missionary religions. And once you bring that in, once you say, go out there and convince people, no matter what, you got to convince them. All right, fine. We'll convince them. Why don't you become a Christian, or why don't you become a Muslim? Well, no, because I got my own religion. Well, if you don't, I'm going to chop your head off, right? Because my leader told me to convert you no matter what. And if I can't convert you, I'm going to chop your head off. This is bad. And this happened. It happened a lot with Christianity to a great degree. It happened more with Islam. Anyway, so Islam is the second largest religion in the world after Christianity, with about 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide. Although its roots go back further, scholars typically date the creation of Islam to the 7th century, making it the youngest of the major world religions. Islam started in Mecca, in modern-day Saudi Arabia, during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, of Muhammad's life. Today, the faith is spreading rapidly throughout the world. Islam facts. The word Islam means submission to the will of God. Followers of Islam are called Muslims. Muslims are monotheistic and worship one God only. One God, the all-knowing God, who in Arabic is known as Allah. Allah. Followers of Islam aim to live a life of complete submission to Allah. This is bad news. This is bad. When you live an entire existence for the complete submission of any God, man, you're opening up yourself to have some guy come to you and say, God told me that you have to go and do this. Oh, really? God told you? Really? Yeah, I spoke with God, and he told me that to tell you that you got to, you got to go over there and kill all those people. Not only that, that guy can actually tell you whatever he wants. Give me money, give money to the church, give all your possessions to the church. Your daughter's been called to marry this guy, you know? So the moment you swear complete submission to any God, not just Allah, but whoever it is, you're opening yourself up for trouble. You're opening yourself up to being manipulated by someone who claims to have direct communication with that God. And this happens all the time. This happens all the time. They believe that nothing can happen without Allah's permission. Yeah, but who knows what Allah is saying or what he isn't saying? Who knows? Well, it falls on a few enlightened people with power, and they tell you what Allah wants. But it's not what Allah wants, it's what they want. Is they want to manipulate you, they want your money, they want your loyalty, they want to use you to blow yourself up and kill people or to attack a country or to do whatever. You know, they don't put bombs around their necks to go blow people up. They get people to go do that. So total submission of any god or fairy or spirit or unforeseen thing, it's going to get you in trouble. And living a life that you will not do anything unless God gives you permission, you're in trouble. You're in trouble because unless God sends you an email or calls you up on the phone himself or appears in your room, there's going to be an intermediary somewhere that's going to say that he spoke with God. And you know what? I want to be the one speaking with God and telling you what to do. I don't want to be the one that is told what to do by someone who claims that he spoke with God. Because I can assure you, they didn't. Islam teaches that Allah's word was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad through the angel Gabriel. Okay. I never met Gabriel. I met a guy, his name was Gabriel Gonzalez, and he was one heck of a tennis player. But Angel Gabriel, I never met him. Muslims believe several prophets were sent to teach Allah's law. They respect some of the same prophets as Jews and Christians, including Abraham, Moses, Noah, Jesus. Muslims contend that Muhammad was the final prophet. Really? The final prophet? Well, I don't know. There's been so many others that have claimed to be prophets that, it cheapens the word prophet. Emma White, Joseph Smith, the one guy in Portugal. It's so easy to claim you're a prophet. Mosques are places where Muslims go to worship. Remember the word mosque. A mosque is a church. It's a place of worship. Some important Islamic holy places include the Kaaba, shrine in Mecca, the Al-Aqsa, mosque in Jerusalem, and the Prophet Muhammad's mosque in Medina. The Quran or Quran, it depends, is the major holy text of Islam, kind of like the Bible. The Hadith is another important book. Muslims also revere some material found in the Judeo-Christian Bible. Followers worship Allah by praying and reciting the Quran. They believe there will be a day of judgment and life after death. So they believe that one day somebody's going to come down and judge them, and then they're going to go to heaven or they're going to go to hell. I don't want to be judged. I'll do the judging, but I don't want to be judged. A central idea in Islam is jihad, which means struggle. While the term while the term has been used negatively in mainstream culture, Muslims believe it refers to internal and external efforts to defend their faith. Although rare, this can include military jihad if a just war is needed. And you will see that word jihad a lot. Uh, people today who blow themselves up and, they do damage, or they claim that they have a personal jihad against the West, or, non-Muslims. They have this jihad going on against non-Muslims because whatever. It's sort of a personal war that they have. So you're going to see that quite a bit. Uh, Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, sometimes spelled Muhammad or Muhammad, was born in Mecca, Saudi Arabia in 570 AD. Muslims believe he was the final prophet sent by God to reveal their faith to mankind. According to Islamic text and tradition, an angel named Gabriel visited Muhammad in 610 AD while he was meditating in a cave. The angel ordered Muhammad to recite the words of Allah. Muslims believe that Muhammad continued to receive revelations from Allah throughout the rest of his life. Starting in about 613, Muhammad began preaching throughout Mecca the message he received. He taught that there was no other God but Allah, and that Muslims should devote their lives to this God. And of course, in the meantime, devote their lives to Him. Uh, Hijra in 622, Muhammad traveled from Mecca to Medina with his supporters. This journey became known as the Hijra, also spelled Hijra or Hijra, and marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. Some 7 years later, Muhammad and his many followers returned to Mecca and conquered the region. He continued to preach until his death in 632. And this is what's called the Hajj, and every Muslim has to make in his lifetime a pilgrimage, a trip to either Mecca or Medina and walk around this structure. I'm not very sure what this structure means or what it does, but they're supposed to walk around it or stare at it and pray, and and as you can see, it's quite impressive, and this is all part of the brainwashing that a religion like Islam does to people. You know, uh, there's no doubt that religion brainwashes people, and you see so many violence coming from people that claim to be religious. Extreme, they're the majority are not extreme. They're just regular people. They go to church and they pray, and that type of stuff. But that constant drumming of these, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that, and all that stuff. And these people are bad, God and devil and demons, and there's some people that are unbalanced, and those are the people that become extreme. Um, Abu Bakar, after Muhammad's passing, Islam began to spread rapidly. A series of leaders known as caliphs became successors to Muhammad. This system of leadership, which was run by a Muslim ruler, became known as a caliphate. The first caliph was Abu Bakr, Muhammad's father-in-law and close friend. Abu Bakr died about 2 years after he was elected and was succeeded in 634 by Caliph Umar, another father-in-law of Muhammad. Muhammad had many wives. In Islam, it is allowed to have multiple wives, and even today, and there are countries where men are allowed to have 2 and 3 wives. I've seen them because I've done a lot of traveling through the Middle East. I've been to Saudi Arabia, I've been to Qatar, I've been to Abu Dhabi. I've been to Dubai. Let me see, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. Then I've been to some of the other less religious Muslim countries: Tunis, Morocco, uh, Egypt. Egypt now is a Muslim country. After the Egyptian Empire fell, eventually the Ottomans went in and took over, and then they converted everybody to Islam. And that's what the Ottoman Empire used to do. They would go in a place and they would convert people, and they would convert people by chopping their heads off if they needed to. Um, but anyway, and I've seen them in Dubai. I remember the first time I saw one guy with 3 wives, and I saw that in Dubai, and it was. I mean, I knew, but I had never really quite seen it. It's really kind of interesting. Um, when Umar was assassinated 6 years after being named Caliph, Uthman, Muhammad's son-in-law, took the role. Umar was also killed, and Ali, Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, was selected as the next caliph. During the reign of the first 4 caliphs, Arab Muslims conquered large regions of the Middle East, including Syria, Palestine, Iran, and Iraq. Islam also spread throughout areas in Europe, Africa, and Asia. The caliphate system lasted for centuries and eventually evolved into the Ottoman Empire, which controlled large regions of the Middle East from about 1517 until 1917, when World War I ended the Ottoman Empire. And right here is where you see why I said that the Ottoman Empire is not as large a study as Rome. Rome goes from 700 BC to 1500 AD. At least the Byzantine Empire. So Rome is a much, much, much bigger study than the Ottoman Empire. We should be able to finish the Ottoman Empire with ease. Now, Sunnis and Shiites. When Muhammad died, there was debate over who should replace him as leader. This led to a schism, a division in Islam, and 2 major sects emerged: the Sunnis and the Shiites. Sunnis make up nearly 90% of the Muslim population worldwide. They accept that the 4 caliphs were the true successors of Muhammad. The Shiites, on the other hand, Muslims believe that only the Caliph Ali and his descendants are the real successors of Muhammad. They deny the legitimacy of the 3 caliphs. Today, Shiite Muslims have considerable presence in Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So here's a division. One believes this, the other one believes that, which is so typical of religion. There are so many Christian sects, so many Christian religions, because every time somebody wants power, he or she creates something, and it's always about power. It is always about power. It is never about serving people. It is never about getting people into heaven. It is always about power. And there was a division between these 2. Now the Shiites, they're the ones, again, as I say, that are in Iran and Syria and part of Iraq. But the Sunnis are the ones that they're the big sect. They're the big ones, the Sunnis. Other types of Islam, other smaller Muslim denominations within the Sunni and Shiite groups exist. Some of these include the Wahhabis, and this is a Sunni sect. This is a subsect of the Sunni religion, made up of members of the Tamim tribe in Saudi Arabia. Was founded in the 18th century. Followers observed an extreme, strict interpretation of Islam, that was taught by Muhammad bin Abad al-Wahhab. They're very strict. And in Saudi Arabia, where you see most of the Wahhabis, women have got to wear these uh, jihadis. Uh, they have to wear this other thing called an abaya that covers them all the way down to their ankles. Their faces have to be covered. Men are separated from women all the time. They can't go to the same classroom together. Um, Saudi Arabia is very oppressive, even today, very oppressive. And I'm not telling you anything that other people will not admit. Very oppressive to women. In fact, the first time I was in Saudi Arabia, I was totally shocked because they have a group of people that call themselves the religious police. And the religious police, they go around the street, they patrol the street to make sure people don't break religious rules. Imagine that. So they carry this little whip, and I'm not kidding you. This is the God's honest truth. They carry this little stick that's kind of like a little whip. And when they see women that their jihadis are a little higher than their ankles, they smack them. They smack them on their feet, and they smack them in the rear. And these women, if they get caught revealing part of their skin on their legs, they can eventually go to jail, right? Um, and it's a very repressive, backward group. They really are. They're just totally backwards. Um, then the other one is the Alawite. This Shiite form of Islam is prevalent in Syria. Followers hold similar beliefs about the Caliph Ali, but also observe some Christian and Zoroastrian holidays. The Nation of Islam, which is the Black American Muslims, it's a Sunni sect that was founded in the 1930s in Detroit, Michigan. They're considered to be Muslims. The Kharijites, this sect broke from the Shiites after disagreeing over how to select a new leader. They're known for radical fundamentalism and today are called Ibadis. And these are some of the guys that blow people up with bombs and all kinds of crazy nonsense like that. Um, so these are the sects. These are the sects of the Islamic religion. These are the sects of the Islamic religion. Um, the Quran is the Bible, is the Islamic Bible, so to speak. It's a holy book for them. You cannot destroy a Quran, otherwise you face death. You cannot do something bad to a Quran because they believe that each Quran contains the words of Muhammad, of Allah through his messenger Muhammad, and that each book is holy. And if you do something to them, they're going to hurt you, and they're going to hurt you bad. The Quran, sometimes spelled Quran or Quran, is the most important book. Oops, is the most important book and most important holy book among Muslims. It contains some basic information that is found in the Hebrew Bible, as well as revelations that were given to Muhammad. The text is considered the sacred word of God and supersedes any previous writing. So it supersedes the Bible, it supersedes everything. Um, so there you go. Most Muslims believe that Muhammad's scribes wrote down his words, which became the Quran. Muhammad himself was never taught to read and write, so he had people that he would talk to, and then they would write down whatever he said. Of course, God was talking to Muhammad, putting words in his head. You know, the book is written with Allah as the first person, speaking through Gabriel to Muhammad. So I guess Gabriel was the conduit. Um, it contains 114 chapters, which are called surahs. Scholars believe the Quran was compiled shortly after Muhammad's death under the guidance of Caliph Abu Bakar. The Islamic calendar, also called the Hijra calendar, is a lunar calendar used in Islamic religious worship. The calendar began in the year 622 AD, celebrating the journey of Muhammad from Mecca to Medina. The Islamic calendar indicates the proper days of Islam holidays and celebrations, including the period of fasting and prayer, known as Ramadan. And in Ramadan, they spend about a month where they cannot eat. They have to fast during the daytime. They can only eat or drink at night, which is kind of crazy. Islam symbols, as in many religions, there is no single image of symbol of Islam that is universally accepted by all Muslims. The crescent moon and star has been adopted in some predominantly Muslim countries as a symbol of Islam. Through the crescent moon and star image is believed to predate Islam and was originally a symbol of the Ottoman Empire. In some other applications, such as the International Red Cross and Red Crescent humanitarian aid movements, a red crescent indicates that followers of Islam are respected and treated accordingly. The color green is also sometimes associated with Islam, as it was reportedly a favorite color of Muhammad's and is often featured predominantly in the flags of Muslim countries. So there you go. Now, I don't know whether you know the connection between the crescent here, the crescent moon, and the Fertile Crescent. And I've always thought that this is the reason why they chose the crescent moon, and that is because right between on the other side of the Stretch of Hormuz, out in the uh, Sahara Desert out there, well, a little bit beyond the Sahara Desert, there's an area that is like this that's called the Fertile Crescent. Fertile Crescent. And it's an area of vegetation. Vegetation. And in this Fertile Crescent was where civilization started. Is where civilization started. It started here because prior to this time, humans were nomads. Nomads meaning that they traveled. They didn't stay in one place. And they would be hunters and gatherers. Somehow they landed here and they realized that they could grow vegetables, fruits, vegetables. And it allowed them to give up the nomadic or the traveling way of life, and this is where agriculture began. This is where agriculture began, and it's called the Fertile Crescent. It looks like a moon, a quarter moon or an eighth of a moon, and I've always wondered whether, whether Muslim countries adopted the crescent moon and the star because civilization really started here. I don't know. I really would like to maybe ask somebody about that, somebody that knows. Muslims follow 5 basic pillars that are essential to their faith. These include Shahada, to declare one's faith in God and belief in Muhammad; Salat, to pray 5 times a day at dawn, noon, afternoon, sunset, and evening. Now, when the first time I went to Saudi Arabia, I heard the call to prayer, and I was shocked. What the hell is going on? So one guy gets on top of the mosque, the closest mosque, and he gets a bullhorn and he starts singing a prayer, because they pray in music. They pray in music. So he starts singing this prayer, and then everybody stops whatever they're doing, and they have little rugs with them, and they put the rugs down and they start praying. Now they have to face Mecca. They pray facing Mecca, right? Wherever they're at, they have to know where Mecca is, and they have to face Mecca, and they pray, and they do this 5 times a day. It is very disruptive. Now, the religious police, if you don't pray, they smack you with these whips. This is in Saudi Arabia. Now, if you're a foreigner, you're supposed to run, go hide somewhere. There is an area in Riyadh that they call the mall, the International Mall, and it's an area that there are shops and things like that. And if you're in there, you don't have to pray, because it is assumed that you're a foreigner and you're not a Muslim, right? So it's crazy. It's insane. This is an extreme religion. It's as extreme as you get. Sadat, to give to those in need, that's nice. I like that. Swam, to fast during Ramadan, which is crazy. And the Hajj, which I told you, which is this right here. This is the Hajj. To make a pilgrimage, right? To make a pilgrimage to Mecca at least once during a person's lifetime, if this person is able, right? Islam's legal system is known as Sharia Law, Sharia. This faith-based code of conduct directs Muslims on how they should believe in nearly every aspect of their lives. So this thing is telling people how to live, what to do, what not to do. And it's trivial. A lot of the stuff is just trivial. It's stupid. And you got to pray 5 times a day. Come on, give me a break. You got to do this. You got to do that. Sharia law requires men and women to dress modestly, and that's why they put these weird garbs on. It also outlines marriage guidelines and other moral principles for Muslims. If crimes are committed, Sharia law is known for its harsh punishment. Harsh punishment, like a thief gets his hand chopped off. For example, the punishment for theft is amputating a person's hand. Adultery can carry the penalty of death by stoning, and they still do this. This is the 21st century, for God's sake. We should be past all this nonsense, all this, caveman sort of stuff. However, many Muslims do not support such extreme measures. Many of them, but many do. Muslim prayer, the Prophet Muhammad is credited with building the first mosque in the courtyard of his house in Medina. Mosques today follow some of the same principles he established in 622 AD. Muslims' prayer is often conducted in a mosque, large open space or outdoor courtyard. A minrab is a decorative feature or niche in the mosque that indicates the direction to Mecca, because no matter what they do, they always have to face Mecca, and therefore the direction to face during prayer. Men and women pray separately, and Muslims may visit a mosque 5 times a day for each of the prayer sections. In addition to hosting prayers, mosques often function as public gathering. Okay, so we've run well over time, but I wanted to do that. I did it purposely because I wanted to cover the part with what do you call it? With Rome, which is much more important. So this is the end of class number 1. Whoops. Class number 1. We'll pick it up here next week, and this is very interesting. I think that Rome contributed to the world a lot more than the Ottoman Empire did. But the Ottoman Empire did contribute somewhat. A lot of bad things did come out of this empire, but it did contribute a few things, and we're going to talk about that. I'll try to make it again so that you understand every step of the way. I'll try to give you the important events. rather than going into a lot of the detail, because you'll forget the detail by tomorrow. But I'll try to give you the important thing. One thing to remember is Islam. Remember the religion, how strong the religion is, the sort of influence that Islam had on the Ottoman Empire. So anyway, so does anybody have any questions whatsoever? Any questions? Even the dumb questions we will answer. Because in reality, there are no dumb questions. Dumb answers, maybe I'll give you a dumb answer, but no dumb question. If there are nothing, then I will say, see you later, alligator.
See you
Bye.
later.